And of course, they also had pets as well, because you can't have a suburban show like this, or a show based sort of in this category, without giving them some pets. So you had Goofy and Max had Waffles, which was the pet cat, and Pete's family had Chainsaw, which was the pet dog. Now, Goof Troop, like Darkwing Duck, and I forgot to mention this, but in those 2 years, Darkwing Duck and then Goof Troop, they both ended up not only airing on the Disney Afternoon, but they also both aired on ABC Saturday mornings. That's right, they both aired on ABC Saturday mornings back in the 90s. And they would have episodes exclusive to one show, to syndication, and to ABC. That's how it worked. And you could tell the difference between the two. Like the ABC ones, when Goof Troop got involved, when Goof Troop was on, would have everybody involved. Where the syndication ones, yeah, they would, but not really. Darkwing Duck, same thing. Darkwing Duck syndicated ones would have everyone involved, but not specifically. The ABC ones, they would. And Goof Troop went on to be a huge hit for Disney, believe it or not. How big of a hit? How about the fact that 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, Disney decided to take a second chance. Walt Disney Television Animation decided to take a second chance on releasing a theatrical film. And in this case, they released a Goofy movie, which is basically, and even Doug Walker said this in his first annual Disney December thing that he did 2 years ago, or a couple years ago. He basically said that, you know, Disney was basically doing Goof Troop the movie. And I think anybody assumed that, because you had all the same characters, Max, Goofy, Pete, PJ. You introduced some new characters like Bobby, who is a friend of Max and PJ, Roxanne, the girlfriend of Max, Stacy, the BFF of Roxanne, and potential girlfriend of Bobby's at the end of the movie. But still, you had all those similar elements, including new characters. Now, the reason some people would never consider Goofy movie to be Goof Troop the movie, is because it didn't have the Goof Troop name, and most importantly, the other characters weren't in there. There was no Peg, there was no Pistol, there was no Waffles, there was no Chainsaw, but yet, you knew it was Goof Troop the movie. The only reason people might say it succeeded was not only was the story better, not only was it a musical like a Disney feature film should be at that time, but also the fact that it didn't bear the Goof Troop name in the title. It didn't come out and say Goof Troop the movie or the Goof Troop movie. It just said a Goofy movie. And I think by doing that, it kind of indicated that yes, it is the Goof Troop film, it is Goof Troop the movie, but it's kind of saying it's its own little thing. It's like, yeah, it's related to Goof Troop. I mean, one of the special features on the Goofy movie DVD is an episode of Goof Troop called Calling All Goofs. So yeah, it's basically saying, yeah, we are based on Goof Troop, but we are our own little thing. So it kind of makes sense. And it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit to the point that 5 years later, they decided, let's do a sequel, but directly to video, an extremely goofy movie, Max Goes to College. There you go. So it was basically, this proved how big Goof Troop was, because it still had an impact years later to the point that in 2000, you had a sequel to Goofy movie. Unreal. But around this time as well, Darkwing Duck and Goof Troop were the only Disney shows being put on Saturday mornings. No. CBS also had their share. CBS, of course, gained the license and the rights to air the Little Mermaid animated series, which of course was based on The Little Mermaid and was a prequel to the Little Mermaid film. So that was pretty cool. And it was a huge hit because it definitely had everything you would expect from Little Mermaid. Great animation, great songs. There's no doubt when they needed to do a song, it had some terrific songs. You know, they had the song, one I can remember is Harmony. I mean, you can't get that out of your head. And then, of course, it had that one song about wishing, because they dedicated it. Here's what I liked about The Little Mermaid. They did a story on Entertainment Tonight where Disney was dedicating one episode of The Little Mermaid to this young little girl that had this disease or sickness, and I think passed away or something. I'm not really sure. So basically, she couldn't talk. Basically, she was sign language. That was the disease or something. And I don't know if she passed away or if she's still alive. I don't really know. But they dedicated one episode to her. They created a character, a mermaid character that looked just like her, had the same problems, couldn't talk, was sign language, deaf. And they brought her back for this, and they brought the character back for another episode, which was pretty cool. Now, again, Little Mermaid wasn't the only show on at that time either. CBS also had gained the license to do the Disney variety show Raw Tunage. Now, Raw Tunage was basically Disney's answer to, like I said, the variety show, sort of the Saturday Night Live deal. Sort of the Saturday Night Live deal. That was their answer to it. And Raw Tunage basically was kind of like Saturday Night Live. It was hosted by different characters at times. Sometimes it wasn't. You know, sometimes it was hosted by different characters, sometimes it wasn't. And what I mean by being hosted by a different character is sometimes you would have characters like Gosling Mallard. And this is at a time when Gosling, she starred on Darkwing Duck, and that's not only a syndicated show, that's an ABC show. So here she is on Saturday, she is hosting Raw Tunage. Lula Von Drake co-hosted with her. He did one episode himself. You had Launchpad doing an episode. You had Don Carnage. You had Jitters A Dog, of course, from Bonkers, and Bonkers himself. You had Marsupilami doing one. You had Sebastian, and he even had his own segments from The Little Mermaid. So you had all these characters basically hosting or co-hosting an episode of Raw Tunage. You basically had them co-hosting or hosting an episode of Raw Tunage, which was really good, which was really a nice touch to give it that variety show-like feel. Now, of course, Raw Tunage spun off two shows the following year. One show would remain on CBS, that was Marsupilami. And it was basically like Raw Tunage. The only thing was one of the segments would be replaced by Sebastian segments. And then, of course, the other spin-off from Raw Tunage was Bonkers. Bonkers ended up on Disney Afternoon in syndication. Now, here's a little history about Bonkers, though, and I've talked about this before. Bonkers went through a lot behind the scenes. Originally, it was just going to be Bonkers and the character Miranda Rice. That's who it was going to be. And they had everything planned out, except when the animation and everything came back from overseas, from like Japan, I think, it came out disastrous to the point that only 19 episodes survived. 19 episodes with Miranda and Bonkers survived. And they basically had to retool the entire thing. So they brought in a different writer. He kind of retooled it, gave Bonkers an origin and how he became a cop, paired him up with another guy named Lucky Piquel, which was sort of like an Eddie Valiant-like character, and off to the races we went. And to me, I think I'm one of the only people out there, one of the many, if not few, if you will, that's a fan of Bonkers. I really enjoyed it. I really got a kick out of it. I did. And I'll always remember watching the pilot when it came out on primetime. And I'll always remember watching the transitional episode itself, the mid-season finale, which was New Partners on the Block. Now, New Partners, again, was a transitional mid-season finale because basically the guy that was in charge, that had taken over, Larry Lantham, I think, decided, you know what, I need to basically answer the question of how Bonkers went from Lucky to Miranda. Because we can't just go one episode with Lucky and then that's it, and then all of a sudden next episode Bonkers is with somebody else. People are going to get confused. So they answered the question by saying, let's do a transitional episode. Now, I'm pretty sure he talked to Dwayne Capizza to get some ideas on Miranda. And obviously he did, to find out who she was, how she was, and all that. And let me tell you something. New Partners on the Block served as a great mid-transitional season finale, mid-season finale, as well as a nice little sequel to Going Bonkers, the uncut pilot. It proved to be very well. And on here, I have both of them as well as I have them on here. Now, unfortunately, Disney has not released any Bonkers official DVDs yet. But there's a lot of people like me that are hoping for that day. Okay, I'm just taking my time there. But we're hoping, for that day that we do get some Bonkers DVDs released real soon. We really hope for that. And hopefully they'll be released completely. Now, the following year, Disney not only released one, but two animated shows. One would, of course, follow suit with Little Mermaid and Masupalami onto CBS. That was Aladdin. Aladdin would be both syndicated on Disney Afternoon as well as Saturday morning watch. That is on CBS. At the same time, Disney also released another series. And this series was built up so big and hyped up so well, hyped up so hugely, and done so, and was hyped up as basically being their answer to Batman, the animated series, as some put it, that it succeeded all expectations. And that other series they released in 1994, Gargoyles. Gargoyles came out in 1994 and succeeded all expectations. I remember when they promoted this on KSMO 62 in Kansas, and I wanted to see it. And I remember every day, whether I was home or I was probably at school doing something, I would put my tape on, and if I had to record the entire Disney Afternoon to do it, I would record Gargoyles. I remember recording specifically all 5 parts of the Awakening pilot. And you want to know how good, how big this was being built up, Gargoyles? They had a contest on KSMO, because they had a kids club, KSMO Kids Club. They had a contest that said, hey, you win this contest. If you're one of our lucky winners, you'll be able to get tickets for a one-night theatrical showing of Gargoyles Awakening in theaters. And I'm sure that where I lived at that time, that station wasn't the only ones that did it. I'm sure there were theaters throughout the country that did it. Now, sometimes it would also depend on when they were showing Awakening. Sometimes they would show it on a Thursday night, sometimes they would show it on a Friday night. It all depends. But it was a one-night showing in theaters. That's how big Disney was hyping this up. They were allowing theaters around the country to do one-night, maybe two-night showings of this pilot in movie format, in theatrical movie format. That's how big it was. That's how big it was and how much they were hyping it up.